Hey everybody, it's Bruce here with Traveling with Bruce. Welcome to my channel today. I want to talk to you today about I guess it's a 49-page document that just got released a couple of days ago out of the EU, the European Union. Apparently, this is a document talking about the potential future of cruise ship travel in Europe, and some of these rules or potential rules might find their way over to North America. It wouldn't surprise me. A number of people in the cruise industry were involved in the crafting of this document, basically health protocols on cruise ships going forward. And my take on it is, or my question on it is this: would you tolerate these conditions, the new health protocols, and would you actually go on a cruise? I kind of wonder if it is possible that a lot of us may have taken our last ever cruise and not known about it at the time, and now it is becoming more and more apparent that, oh my goodness, we might never cruise again. Those of you who are following my channel, thank you very much for subscribing. Thank you for giving my video updates thumbs ups. Those of you who watch me all the time, you know what this means to me. Thank you. Love your comments, and thank you for following me on my Facebook group page, Traveling with Bruce. Come on over there and ask to join. I'll let you in. And also, thank you for following me on Instagram. Let's get into this. Have you taken your last ever cruise? Because here are some of the potential changes that are coming our way, and now these points I'm going to talk to you about are basically, they're in writing, and they might be adopted by the CDC through American ports, which means that any cruise where a cruise ship touches any territory of the United States would be affected. And here's the number one question: would you tolerate wearing a mask on board a cruise ship virtually every day you're taking a cruise? We're talking about the ideas that are being tossed around, like the hallways will be marked on the floor as one-way hallways only. There will be one-way tracks on board the decks of the cruise ship. There will be masks required by all crew and all passengers in all public areas. So if you're walking from, say, your cabin to a restaurant, or to disembark, or you come into a port, you got to wear a mask. You might need to wear a mask just to go to the pool deck, and then when you leave the pool deck, you have to wear a mask. When you go back to your room, you might have to wear a mask while on the pool deck. The other one is another one that's really going to cause consternation is anyone 65 and older may be required to provide a doctor's certification of health. It could get to the point that not only the cruise lines might insist on it. Again, this might be for insurance purposes, but it might well be that a cruise ship visiting various islands in the Caribbean or countries in Europe, each stop that the ship makes along its journey, the local country's health authorities are insisting that before a cruise ship even disembarks from its home port, say you're in Europe and it's going to leave Southampton, before leaving Southampton, the countries that the ship is going to visit have to be notified, and it has to be proven, and it has to be verifiable by the cruise line that all passengers 65 and older have got verified health clearance certificates. Now, it might be that we all have to get tested for the virus within 72 hours of boarding the ship. It might be that we have to have a doctor's note of fit to sail kind of note a week or 2 weeks, within 1 or 2 weeks of sailing. I'm not sure of this, but from what I'm thinking about here is that this might be so onerous that it might prove too costly for a lot of people to get this. A number of doctors may be reluctant to sign off on a note like this because they fear they might be held liable if you get ill on a cruise and the third country in, you have to be taken off the ship for quarantine or health reasons. And they trace this all the way back to the doctor who signed off on a health certificate on someone who clearly shouldn't have been on a ship at all. And maybe the doctor will be held liable for the health costs of the individual if the individual can't afford to pay it. I'm just throwing out there these, worst case scenarios. I do not like what I'm reading, to be honest. It could well be that people 65 and older will find it so onerous to be able to even get onto the ship that they won't even bother. There are other reports in this document, other references, that people 65 and older might be separated on board the ship from other age group passengers. And it could well be that there might be times where you're allowed to go to the pool deck and times you're not. There might be times set aside where you can go to restaurants and other times you can't. There may be decks on the ship that are dedicated only to 65s and older. There's all kinds of talk about this. And I'm thinking, well, if you're going on a family cruise, grandma and grandpa and mom and dad and some kids, how's that going to work? You got to split everybody up. There's just all this uncertainty. And potential cost. Pools closed. Pools that, used to have 10, 20 people in them and surrounded by hundreds during the day for a tan. This is over. Everything I'm reading, everything I'm finding out, it sounds like in the case of the average swimming pool on board a cruise ship, if it's an outdoor pool, people will be allowed to use it. But it might be that only 6 people or 4 people in an entire swimming pool would be allowed in at any one time. Now, how is that going to work with thousands of people on board a cruise ship that are sailing a one-week cruise, who are dying to get some sun, want to get some relaxation, and have a quick dip in the pool? You now have to get in line to wait, and you might only be allowed a minute or two of time in the pool, and then you got to get out and let someone else in. How are you going to regulate that? Outdoor spas or hot tubs. The talk in the document is that only people from the same family will be able to use the hot tub at any one time, up to a maximum of 2 or 3 or 4 people, maybe, depending how big these things are. Perfect strangers, you and your wife and another couple can't use the hot tub at the same time. Well, that means there's going to be lineups. And, do you want to have a 2-minute hot tub and get out? I mean, aren't you supposed to be in there for 10, 15 minutes and really get your body all loosened up and enjoy? What about the hot tubs inside the spa areas? It sounds to me, from everything I'm reading, indoor hot tubs, spas, and pools will be closed, completely drained of water, not operating. Do you want to go into the spa area when you can't use those facilities? The other thinking I have is one of my favorite activities is going to the ceramic heated loungers and catching a bit of a nap after a hot tub. Those might be shut off because they're not far enough apart from each other to be socially distance appropriate. So goodbye to the spa, from what I can understand. Goodbye to the pool deck as far as with social distancing. The entire pool deck on some of these cruise ships now may only hold 200 people at a time instead of 1,000. I don't know how that's going to work. Cruises, for those of us who've loved to go cruising, were affordable. We could go on a 5-star vacation for a 3-star price. The volume of people on board a cruise ship is what made it work. Having the buffet and having the main dining room handling, 3, 4, 5, 6, 700 people at a time meant that we could have steak and lobster and high-end foods, and yet we're paying $600-800 for an entire week on a cruise. We were getting this volume discount advantage for a 1-week cruise, a 10-day cruise. That is out the door. That now looks like there will be restrictions on capacity to the point where I find it hard to believe that a cruise ship can even go out at 50% capacity. In the document, there was talk about having to set aside cabins just in case people get ill. which means that these cannot be sold to anyone. It also appears to me that the inside cabins might be a thing of the past as well. It might well be that the only cabins that the cruise lines will be allowed to utilize for their passengers are cabins with outdoor fresh air. That means balconies. If you now have a restriction on how many people can be on board, you have a restriction on a number of cabins that can't be sold at all, you're down to 35, 40, 45% capacity potential. Goodbye to the volume discount that we used to enjoy as cruisers. So, a $500 cruise or an $800 cruise might now be a $1,500 to a $2,000 cruise. I think that kicks a lot of us out of this deal. Other costs that I think are going to soar are going to be port charges, taxes, and fees. I think entities like the Homeland Security Department, I think the fees for cruise passengers are going to skyrocket. I think that fees for cruise ships coming into ports are going to skyrocket because part of the arrangement or part of the deal going forward here could well be that before, like I said, a cruise ship can leave where it is home ported, they have had to make arrangements with the countries where the ships are going to go, and the cruise lines and the ports that will house and allow the cruise lines to come in will have to allow ill passengers to disembark the ships and go into hospitalization or quarantine facilities. They're going to have to be prearranged and pre-reserved on the just-in-case factor. And I can tell you that there's no way I can see the Cayman Islands, for example, wanting to buy into this deal. They've got 4 to 6 ships a day visiting the Cayman Islands under normal circumstances. If each of those ships have up to 150 cabins reserved for potential ill passengers, the folks in the Cayman Islands are going to freak out, wondering, oh my gosh, every time a ship comes into port, could we have anywhere from 5 to 50 people that are ill that we're going to have to allow into our country and into our hospital systems and into some kind of a quarantine system? This will have to be paid for by the cruise line, which means, of course, you and I have to pay this price. How is this doable? Coming into Jamaica, how is it doable there? How is it doable in Grenada? How is it doable in Barbados? It isn't. I'm telling you, there is no way that these island nations can assume the risk of being saddled with, tens, dozens, or more passengers that they have to accept because they got ill in the last 48 hours since their last port stop somewhere else. This is a blank check healthcare cost that these nations will never accept. In Europe, yeah, they have the national healthcare plans, but if you're not European, you're in big trouble. If you're from the USA and you are ill in Greece or in Turkey or in Italy, France, Spain, you're going to get off the ship at the next port of call, and you might be subject to a 2-week quarantine in a facility. And I can't tell you what your travel companion situation is going to be. I don't know where my wife is when I'm in quarantine. She can't stay with me. Does she have to get off the ship too and spend 2 weeks in a hotel at a moment's notice? How do we get home? How is this physically and economically feasible is what I want to know. Will cruise lines arrange with the CDCs and the health authorities in Europe and various countries? Will they assume or coordinate a insurance policy, a travel insurance health policy that covers all of this? I don't know of an insurance company that would want to take this deal unless it's $200 a person or $500 a person in premiums. Again, coming back to the cost, this might kill a whole bunch of folks trying to go cruising. I really worry about that. port stops, the embarkation and disembarkation procedures, they're all going to be modified. I don't know how that'll happen. We're talking about 1, 2, 3,000 passengers per ship, all trying to get off a ship and get on a ship within a few hours of each other with day stops. I don't know how this is going to happen. There's just so many questions about these potential new rules, which in themselves they all are being proposed for the right reasons. We want to protect crew members, we want to protect passengers, we want to protect port people, the port officials, we want to protect local populations. But if one group doesn't trust the other, in other words, if you're a cruise ship passenger and you get off the ship and take a bus ride, say, to Florence, and you're now walking the streets of downtown Florence with a tour guide, and you're all wearing your princess name tag on your chest, or or a name tag for Costa Cruising or whatever, the locals might avoid you like you're carrying the plague. They might view cruise ship passengers as bad news. And I'm thinking about these protests that we saw in the last few years in Venice, for example, where Venetians didn't want cruise ships at all in their city. I'm wondering about the same thing for places like Rome, Barcelona, Lisbon, Portugal, Cadiz, Villefranche-sur-Mer, any of these ports in Europe, Malta, Cyprus, we may be persona non grata here. And the same thing in the Caribbean, the same thing in possible other ports around the world. Cruise ship passengers may be viewed as dangerous to the local population because they don't buy in to the national healthcare program protocols. They just don't believe that they're strict enough. And if you're 65 and older, and I'm about to turn 65 this year, I think I'm getting the message that I'm not welcome anymore. My business might not be wanted. I don't know how the cruise lines can survive without 60 plus travelers, 65 plus travelers. I don't know how they can do it. The statistics are there that cruise lines survive and thrive from passengers who can afford to pay cash and can afford the nicer units and can afford the services. They can't provide the services anymore, and they can't provide the relaxing trip that people are craving. I don't know how they're going to make it. These are just thoughts from a guy who's sitting here going, have we taken our last cruise under the current circumstances going forward? Even when there's a vaccine, if there are anti-vaxxers out there, how is this going to happen? Are those anti-vaxxers not going to be allowed on a cruise ship? Is that how this is going to work? And how can you prove to a third country that your vaccine was actually taken? You actually took a vaccine. How can you prove it? What standard documentation is there to prove this happened? And how much will it cost you to prove to authorities in other countries that you are safe to enter? I don't know. It might be impossible and so cost prohibitive that it might not happen. Anyway, those are thoughts from me. I'd love to get your reaction to this. God, I miss cruising. I really want to go back to the old days. I miss it. But going forward, I'm not sure how this is going to play out. Let me know what you think. Thank you for joining me today, and thanks for all your support. We'll talk to you later, everybody. Bye for now.